Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Marketing Corner.
Whoop, whoop.
There we go. And today's episode is episode number 83.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about something bold, something not safe, or like, if you can call it that. We're going to be talking about copywriting. So I've recently had some interesting talks at the Spark Force around how do you pressure, or like where do you put your copywriting? Do you go bold? Do you go safe? How do you differentiate between them? And I think it's a pretty interesting funny. I think it's a pretty interesting topic to think about, because a lot of people, they always want bold copy, I feel like, but that's very rarely where it ends up. Mm-hmm. So let's start there today. So for you, Jen, and on Amando, do you feel like, are you bold in your copy, or how do you differentiate between different types of copywriting?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point, and this is something not just at Anamondo, but I think I come up with a lot, especially as a foreigner here. So I think there's like a cultural issue at play sometimes when it comes to ad copy. We were just talking online or offline before we started recording. You know, as an American, we're bold and we exaggerate, and we love to brag about ourselves, right? That's kind of how our personalities are. But the Danes are very the opposite of that. You're a little bit more calm. You like to stick to reality a little bit, and you don't really like to brag about yourself. And I think in my experience of working in both cultures, I can kind of see that coming into ad copy. And I've been in situations where I've said something like the best in this, and it's like, oh, we can't say we're the best. Maybe we'll say we're pretty good. And one of the examples we talked about, right, is the Carlsberg, like probably the best beer in the world, not the best beer in the world, but probably, it's kind of, there's always a safe zone, I think, which I think is really interesting. So that's why I think this is a really interesting topic for us to dive into today.
Yeah, I think so too. Like one of the ways we're working with it is we're trying to create this kind of matrix right now where we place in copywriting, let's call it philosophy, right? Because it's a little bit hard, like as an agency, sometimes when we talk to companies, we're 16 people, and sometimes we work with companies who are 300, 500 people. It's not like we can change everything for them. So sometimes with small teams, it's a little bit easier, but with bigger teams, it's not like we go in and says like, hey, this is your new copywriting direction. So we have to take small steps. But I found like a lot of teams are worried about the repercussions of having bold statements. And it's not just copywriting, it's just also your ads in general. We have a client the other day, and they were like, hey, there's three options, and one is super humorous, the one is a middle of humorous, the one is super safe. And then after a while, they were like, yeah, we'll go for safe. And I'm like, damn it. Yeah, damn it. Because what I've seen across the board, and I think this is where it boils down to for me at least, is that whenever we are bolder, whenever we say statements that are more controversial, and when I say controversial, I don't mean in a bad way. I don't want you to, you don't need to go out and use political statements or say something truly controversial. You just need to be a little bit, you got to break the mold a bit. That stuff just works better. Like on average, it just performs better. So, and that goes for copywriting, it also goes for ad creatives, right? Mm-hmm. And I just find it funny, because it's actually something I haven't really figured out why. Because it's not just one thing is understanding people who don't come from marketing. Fair enough. Those people might not be willing to be bold. If you're an accountant, you're not bold is not really in your blood. Let's be real. So
we just lost all the accountants. You could hear them all just unsubscribe. Yeah. Damn it, Casper.
Goodbye. Thanks for now. but accountants, GDPR people, whatever. Those people, compliance people, it's not in their blood to be bold. Fine, fair enough. But for marketeers, I actually meet a lot of resistance on being bold, and I just find that interesting. Do you feel the same? And it's not just from Danes. It's also from international. It's not just from Danish peeps. It's also from Americans. It's also from people from the UK. It's also from Germans. Doesn't surprise me that much, though. But also from Swedish people. But actually, the Swedish people are. We've had a good mix. Some are really risk averse, and some are really risk seeking. So it's a little bit different. But how's your impression? Well, is this something you see as well, or?
Yeah, definitely have seen it. Definitely. I mean, when I say Danes, I am generalizing, and it's because it's the culture I live in, but I'm sure everyone likes to play it safe, and it depends on your position, right? Like, as you say, I'm sure maybe our CFO or our legal team is going to be a little bit more tiptoeing around than maybe sales and marketing, who are like, let's just hammer home. But I think there's a bunch of different things at play, right? One is, of course, you want to stand out. If we look at the pros and the cons of being bold, right? And again, not offensive, not provocative, just standing out, trying something different is good, but then different can also be bad. There's a saying of like, be different, not weird, or, don't be too far out, because then you're going to lose people. So it's a very, and this is why copywriting, I think, is a very difficult thing to get right. It's a skill. There's a reason it's a job. It's something you do for a living, because you have to take a lot of information. You have to put it in a punchy way that resonates with the right people, but not with the wrong people. And you get the point across in a way that grabs attention, that helps you stand out amongst a very crowded, whether it's on your feed or whether it's on a billboard or whether it's in a new magazine, you have to stand out. And so it's a really difficult thing. And I think also one thing I think we should mention is also the rules in Sweden, where you can't make bold claims.
No, it's true. And it's very much the same in Denmark too. Like, there are some rules around what you can do in terms of bold statements. Yeah. Yeah,
because I think, I remember once in Plan Day, we had said, like, we are the world's leading, whatever. And in Sweden, we could not run that ad because there was no actual proof that we were the world's leading.
And that's the same for Denmark.
Sweden,
that would be
is it the same for Denmark? Yeah. So,
exactly.
So that also contributes, right, to how bold can you be when you can't make bold, sweeping statements without hard evidence that you are the world's leading whatever you are.
Exactly. And you said it just before we went on here, like that's why Carlsberg is probably the best beer in the world. And it's funny, right? Like, you laugh at it when you hear it, but there's a reason they have to write probably, and they're messing around with it. I know there's a lot of wishful thinking going into that, but essentially that's why they do it. But it is the playfulness around Danes in general, because you can't technically say the best beer in the world.
You can't say you're the best beer in the world, legally.
No, exactly. Legally you can't. So it's probably, but it's
probably.
not. Yeah. But and I find it so funny because, like, there's especially, and here I really find it funny from a B2B perspective, like, working with B2Bs all the time, because, like, there's a lot of B2C companies that are really open to it, like
yes.
And I think I love the example. I think Ferne Branca is a perfect example, right? Like, that drink, they it's a bitter. It's known as a bitter. So they have these ads and, like, Danish weather sucks or something, and then life is bitter, or like
I've seen that.
Hey, it's time for your taxes again. Life is bitter, or something. Yeah. Like, they playfulness around this. Of course, now they found that angle, so they're gonna keep rolling on that angle, but they've probably explored a bunch of different things to get there. And you see a lot of them. You see, what is it, Oatly, Surreal, those kind of brands.
Oatly,
that are
I like those.
Have gotten super famous by using these things, right? And when it comes to B2B, like, at least from the Copenhagen startup scene perspective, I don't see a lot of it. Like, I think I talk a bit with Dream Data. Dream Data is pushing it a little bit. Like, they're trying to be a bit bold, and they also have the autonomy and people who believe in it. But it's just like, there's so many brands where I'm talking to them like, come on, guys, let's push the needle a little bit. Like, we don't have to say the best beer in the world, but we can at least say the best software for this, probably the best software in the world for this.
Probably the best. And what's interesting, though, is, you mentioned different industries, right? Because Dream Data is marketing to marketers. So we love that stuff, and that would get my attention. Yeah. But I'm marketing to IoT connectivity software, solution architects and engineers who can smell marketing bullshit a mile away. And so I can't really use buzzwords with my core market, because that's going to actually turn them off. Whereas maybe for marketers, being a bit buzzwordy is going to get our attention. Maybe it'll backfire and you'll ignore it and say, this is a pile of crap. But you also have to think of whose attention you're trying to grab. If we're trying to grab the accountants of the world, are we going to be cheeky and bold and pushing things, or are we going to be factual and to the point? And, there's so many things to take into account.
And I don't agree 100%. Like, because, like, fundamentally, I agree in the fact that we need to take into account the persona, right? That's 100% true. Don't get me wrong. There's a difference between talking to a marketeer and an accountant. With that said, then I still feel like if you're talking to an accountant, you still gotta be. I keep using the word bold, but you gotta do something that breaks the mold.
Gotta stand out.
because you got to stand out, because there's like being factual. Well, every fucking person who's trying to sell to an accountant is being factual, or they're trying to do it, right? Like there's no difference. Like everyone is trying, when you sell to an accountant, is trying to do the same things, right? So you got to find something to break the mold. And I seriously doubt being more factual is the way to break the mold for accountants, right? Like I don't think that's the route to go for. I feel like, and maybe it's not buzzworthy, then that's the wrong word, but maybe just being like, okay, you could be like to their pain points, like, okay, hey accountant, I know you struggle with this, right? Like,
yes,
like,
it's the resonating,
it's the
pain
resonating,
points.
like the pain points, and that's in my world. That's a different version of bold, but it's still pushing the boundaries a bit. And even that, like, it takes a while to find stuff like that, right? Like it's not.
And when you do hit on it, I think it's really, really special. And in marketing, the thing that gets me excited is when everything comes together and you're like, this is awesome. Like, boom, we got the headline is great. The image is great. The landing page is great, and everything kind of comes together and stands out. I just think sometimes it's very, very hard to get that approval. And I think I'll give one example of something. And this is because my daughter's birthday party was on Sunday. You couldn't make it. That's fine. I won't take
judgment.
it personally. No hard feelings between us. But I was with someone who I used to work with at Plan Day, and we were talking about a campaign that I did where there was an issue with Ryanair, the airline, where they didn't schedule their pilots properly. And so the pilots couldn't fly because you're only allowed to fly for a certain amount of hours. They fucked up scheduling their pilots or whatever. And so 40,000 people couldn't fly or something like that. It was some big thing that happened. And Plan Day is an employee scheduling platform. So I woke up to this news and I was like, the tweet just popped in my head. And so I did a tweet at Ryanair that said, our scheduling platform comes with a free trial, just saying. And I wouldn't say it went viral. Like it didn't go viral, but it got a lot of attention. It got a lot of clicks. It got a lot of shares. It got a lot of retweets. It got us out there a little bit. And it was up for maybe 2 hours. And our C-level said, you got to take that down. You got to take that down. We're going to get sued. We're going to get sued. And I was like, why? Why are we going to get sued? But it was that kind of, it's too much. And we're calling someone out publicly. And there was a little bit of fear of, again, being bold, being a little bit brash and funny. And so I had to take it down about 2 hours later.
I think there's a lot of like, I work with a really smart legal guy. He was a legal advisor.
He's a very tiny lawyer.
I don't know why I said small. He was not small. He was bigger and wider than me. Like he was very fit, by the way. Anyways, this really smart guy. And I worked with him before, and he taught me something that for some reason I really took it with me, and it's kind of like you call it a risk matrix. It's essentially like, so you have this matrix in front of you. People that are listening on pod, you probably can't see what I'm drawing with my beautiful hands here, but you have this matrix in front of you, and just imagine each corner represents a certain level of risk. So there's a level of risk. So how much it hurts. So if you get caught or busted or whatever for doing it, then what's the how bad does it hurt?
What's the worst that can happen? Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? How is it going to hurt a lot? And then the second part is how likely is it to happen? Those are the two metrics you look at. So how much will it hurt and how likely is it to happen? So let's take an example. Let's just be real. If you're a small startup, breaking the GDPR regulation, will it hurt? Yes, a little bit, but for a small startup, not that much, but it will hurt. But is it likely to happen? No, very much not. So he said the only things you deal with are the things that are very likely to happen or likely to happen and will hurt. And for a lot of cases, for startup scale-ups, GDPR wouldn't compliance, and that I'm just using that as an example, would be like very unlikely to happen, but it would hurt a bit. And in those cases, you are aware of them, but you don't have to necessarily deal with them on a daily basis. And I think my point with bringing that up is that stuff like this, the managers that told you to stop should really take a step back and say, okay, how likely is it we're gonna get sued?
Yeah.
For this, like, is that actually likely? I only know your story, but I would say really no. And the second part is, would it hurt? Like, I don't actually think so. Like, yes, there would be some repercussions, and if you lost the lawsuit, but the media attention. You could spin it. So my point is, I don't think it would hurt that much, and it's not that likely to happen. AKA, fuck it.
Let's go. Well, even if they did sue us, like,
you could win.
Again, that's more
right?
publicity.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people go like they don't want to take any risk. Like they're extremely risk averse when it comes to this stuff. And I'm like, you only deal with this stuff. Can this really hurt us? Okay, fair enough. And the second part is it likely to happen that it goes wrong? And that's the kind of matrix I use across. So if it's not likely to happen or it's gonna hurt a lot, then I do it. Then you should do it most of the time.
And how do you come up with bold ads? Like, what do you have a formula? Do you have a process, or is there someone just super creative who's like, blink, here's how I boil that big phrase down into 3 words?
I wish I had something smart. So this is probably more for our copywriter Mila and such, but she spends a lot of time on coming up with creative things, right? For me, it's for my own process is a lot more like I talk to people and then suddenly it clicks. Like I'm the kind of like I don't know, I'm the click kind of guy. Like just like you wake up and then it's like, got it. That's I work exactly. I have a case right now. Can't say what it is, but a pretty cool case. And then I talked to their sales team, their sales leader, and then he explained some part of the process. And then when I asked him, so what do you think we should focus on? He was like, we should focus on this because of this. And when he said it, I was like, pling, got it. Now I know. I agree. This is great. This is how the ads should be. And then it clicked for me. So that's how I do these things. But, I'm not necessarily the copywriter or the creative genius per se. I have some good ideas once in a while, but that's not. So my process is just literally talk to a bunch of people, get as much information, and then hopefully my brain connects the dots along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the same for me. I think I do have a creative streak. That's one of the reasons I got into marketing. And sometimes something will just pop in my head and I'm like, we're calling it this. And it works. Other times I have used ChatGPT where I'm like, here's what we do, put it into 5 words, 10 words, 3 words, boil it down. Or one of the other things, is you can ask ChatGPT, like, who cares, or why does this matter? And, it'll break it down to like the core elements of like, why does anyone care about this?
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. And that's definitely way smarter than me. I think like personally, I'm just like a kind of brainstorm guy. I hate the word brainstorm because that's not really contributing too much. But I feel like I a lot of the times when I hit the wall on whatever I need to come out with creatively, I just spitball it. So I just like, hey, do you have 5 minutes? And it's like, here's where we're at. Here's what we're doing. And then fire away. What don't you like? Play the devil's advocate. Push me. And then that pushback gives me like, okay, now I know where I need to go or what I need to do. So.
Yeah, that's my whiteboard, which I've taken down since I've been on maternity leave. But yeah, I write it down. I just write down all the ideas and I have to look at it and kind of go, what's the common theme here,
Actually, I just got a whiteboard behind me at my desk, so I can do exactly that.
Yes. See,
whiteboard session coming up. Yeah.
Let's do it. I wish, like, we're sitting here talking about, like, be creative, and we can be creative, and we call our podcast Marketing Corner. Like, it was the first thing we came up with, and then we just haven't really,
It's so funny. Like, I've ever told you what my first, what my company was called? Like, my consult, like, I couldn't come up with something, so it was like Hawkman Consulting.
The end.
That's the level of creativity I had when I had to come up with a name for my first company. Yeah.
I went with JMO. JMO's been my nickname for years.
Okay, that's a little bit better. Slightly better. Not amazingly, but it's better. It's better.
Yeah, it was my nickname, so I'm like, yeah, that'll do.
Did I ever told you a story how I came up with the name Sparkforce?
No, I think you've told me, but tell the listeners.
Okay, fair enough. So essentially what I did was I just put all the great ideas. So I had like superhero, B2B marketing, growth agency, and rocket growth or something like that. Those words I threw into a mixer, like a chat GPT kind of mixer, like a name mixer, and then Sparkforce was spit out on the other side. I was like, that works. That's cool. That's super. It feels growthy, feels B2B-ish, feels a bit superhero. Yep, dig it. Let's go.
Yeah.
The logo is a completely different story, but it's different. So, but to get back on train here a little bit, I think for copywriting, I think what I like to do and like I like to push people. I feel like we as marketeers, the thing is we know better. Like we know what works, and that's the thing that surprises me. So I'm also like the episode today is also for me like to educate, and maybe there's someone out there who's listening who has a good argument for not wanting to do this. I understand the internal stakeholders. For me, that's not an argument. Like, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I understand like why you can't. If your boss is like, "I'm gonna fire you if you do this," like, okay, then you don't fucking do it. But at the same time, like, it's also your job as a marketeer to try and educate and inform your company and be like, guys, we gotta push the needle, gotta be a bit bold. After all, like you see a million ads every day, like you don't remember any of them, so you only remember the ones that stand out, right? So,
and there is, I mean, this is a little bit away from bold, but there is kind of a formula for writing at least headlines in ads, right? And that's something that we have talked about, I believe, in previous episodes, where, you know, it's like, make sure you personalize it, so save your time, save your money, or something like that, because like the you aspect helps put yourself in the position, or you put your company in the position of the person. And then there was a few other tips where it was like, you know, active language, you know, things, don't do passive language, but do active language, maybe use an exclamation point or use some kind of symbol. There's like this whole thing, I think it was called, I'm going to forget the name of it now. It's going to annoy me, but it's like glaucoma, but it's for reading ads, because we see the same thing all the time. And so our bodies have gotten used to just seeing the shape of words, and we're like, yeah, we know what this is without actually reading it. But when you throw in a symbol or a number, that jars us a little bit. So we stop and we actually read the words. So, you know, some of the ad copy hints and tricks and hacks I've heard is try to throw a symbol or try to throw a number into the ad copy to kind of break up that monotony of people just looking at the shape of the word as opposed to reading the words. So there's little tricks here and there to make it stand out, but the ultimate test is what it actually says. That's what's going to really make it pop.
I love, there's a Danish company called Scale Up Finance that does like a CFO rent for hires, essentially. And they made some really cool ads in a bit of a billboard style, where it just said, like, where there's a bunch of numbers and then in between there's like letters and says, hey, are you also seeing numbers everywhere?
Yeah.
and it's just, it's a playful, it's good, and it's good copywriting. It's a good idea, but it's good copywriting, right? Like, and I think one thing I also wanted to point out, and this is like a huge shout out to good copywriters, right? Like, you never notice good copywriting. You only notice the bad. Yes. Like a lot of the, like, yes, as marketeers, we might notice it, but most people don't notice good copywriting. Only when it's like spectacular, but not just solid good copywriting. They only notice the bad. Like they only notice, hey, there's a spelling mistake here. Yeah, fuck off, I know. I wrote this 30-page guide and you found one spelling mistake. That's great. Awesome, thank you.
And it's in my second language, so...
Yeah, so please.
So, typoglycemia, that's what it's called. Typoglycemia, and that's a phenomenon where you read text and but you look at the shape as opposed to reading every single letter. Typoglycemia. But yeah, exactly. And there's all these things, you know, there was this thing that kind of went around where Cambridge University did this study and they mixed all the letters up in the word, but the letters were the same and you could still read it despite the fact that all the words are spelled wrong. So you know, making that stand out and trying to kind of jar the brain a little bit to go, and you know, even if you get that extra 0.2 of a second of someone looking at it, that's one way to get eyeballs. But again, it has to be, those are just hacks to get the attention. You have to say something exciting. What is an example of an ad that sticks out in your mind? That's bold.
From a copywriting perspective, or well, I think the ones I mentioned, like the scale up kind of finance guys. I think the early versions of some of the Gong ads were great. If you look at B2B SaaS software, I thought those were amazing. I think Cognism has done some pretty good stuff too. I think like if you look at B2C, there's so many examples, right? The Oatly, Surreal, those kind of like are the ones everybody talks about. But I think those are great. But yeah, I think one of the things I found is interesting is also sometimes the limitations on ads, right? Like especially like I talk a lot about text ads on LinkedIn. These small ads you see on the side where I literally have 25 characters.
Right, yeah,
that
super tiny,
is
right?
not a lot. So, but here it's so funny to be creative because like everybody knows there's no space. So so some of the stuff we've done is just like half-finished sentences. We're the best at B2B it's like, hey, we would love to show you what we can do. Oh shit! It's like messing around, that kind of stuff. That's funny, right? So I think also these like the frames also actually sometimes induces a bit more creativity because like the limitations are like no limits can also sometimes feel a bit limiting. to some extent.
Yes, true. Yeah. It's
Right,
too many
where
options.
It's too many options. Where here you have 25 characters, it's only text. Convince me. Okay, shit. What do I do, right?
Yeah.
So
It's a good way to get the creative, juices flowing. We did one exercise. Shout out to Connor. He's our head of brand communications, because he did this exercise, which I thought was really cool when it came to getting messages across. We had a workshop, and he had us talk about our plans for the weekend using only emojis. So we had to just use emojis to say what we're going to do.
please no eggplants. Please no eggplants.
No eggplants for me. But it was a very,
eggplants
very
and
good...
peaches. Eggplants and peaches.
Eggplants and peaches. Oh, dear God. That's bold.
sorry.
You're being bold and provocative,
I'm being
Casper.
bold.
Good
Yeah,
job.
God. Yeah,
There it
sorry.
is. But I thought it was really interesting of like how we can boil things down so much to, I don't know, a simple symbol to kind of express what we're trying to do. So it's a really healthy exercise, I think, to try to boil things down. What is the core thing we're trying to get across? How do I personalize it? How do I stand out? If I put myself in the shoes of the prospect, what is going to resonate with them? What's going to get their attention? Oatly does this really, really great. Oatly does it really well. I think Dream does it really well. The whole, our CMO wanted us to spend this money on
it's great.
paid
It's
ads.
fun. Yeah.
Very clever. I can't really say that I've come up with anything quite that exciting in my career yet, but I hope to soon. But yeah, I think it's definitely a skill. It's an art, and if you have a really good copywriter, treat them well and hold on to them with both hands, because everyone's going to want to get their hands on them.
And try to push internally. Like, try to make it better. Don't be afraid.
Absolutely.
So, on that note, thank you for listening, guys, and thanks for tuning in. And go out there and write some great copy.
Be bold, people. Be bold.
Be bold. Okay. Bye.
All right, bye.